What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. I've got Mackey from IronSide Ranch on with me today. We're going to be talking about some homesteading, farming, rotational grazing. Like from the landscape world, we have like monoculture, and it turns out, like, you correct me if I'm wrong here, but you really want like 11, 7, 11, 12 or more varieties of grasses.
Well, there's just no place in nature where you only have a monoculture. It doesn't.
Yeah.
It doesn't.
Yeah. Right. You always get weeds, right?
You're always going to get weeds. Yeah, we love our weeds.
Right.
And so yeah. So your bottom line is on this rotational grazing. So Joe Salatin calls it mob stocking, herbivorous, solar conversion, lignified carbon sequestration, fertilization.
Yeah. Yeah, but that's exactly what it is.
Yeah, and it's a bit of a mouthful, and it's a fancy way of saying that we put a bunch of cows in a very small area. They graze it down, and then we move the cows off. And then the next thing we do is we put the pigs on there. We want the pigs to do a little bit of disturbance. They eat the grass, they turn over the soil, and then we move the pigs off of there. And then you put the chickens on there. They clean up all the manure, the bugs, and then they move off. And then we let it rest. We let the nitrogen sit there. We let the bacteria work, and we let the soil build back up.
And so what's happening there is, like, as your soil is building up, that's where your worms are getting, like, they're enriching, your bugs are coming in. Mm-hmm. You've tilled the area a little bit, so you've softened it for other things to come up.
Yeah, and you got to realize this is a long-term process. This doesn't happen. So it doesn't happen overnight the way that you could just go buy a bunch of chemical nitrogen fertilizer and throw it on there, throw some seed on there, and you'd have nice looking pasture very soon. It would not necessarily have the adequate nutrition, but it would be decent looking grass very quickly. And so it takes a long time to build this up. Especially if you're working like down south where we are, you're cutting land, right? So you're cutting trees and everything down off this land. So you're dealing with stumps and roots and stuff in there for 5 years. Then they take time to rot. If you're up north, if you're in Colorado and you're cutting tree roots down, good luck getting those to rot. They'll never rot. So you have to use the animals to your advantage. Which means what we do is we go in, we take the big trees out, we take out the firewood that we want, the sawmill lumber, because we bought a sawmill for the farm, and then we run the cows through, and the cows, we let them overgraze it, right? We let them kill everything back to the ground, and which is a long-term goal. So we're taking 2 steps back, or 2 steps back to take 4 steps forward, right?
Okay.
So we're overgrazing areas right now, and I'm unrolling hay like crazy on it because I buy real cheap hay because I want that carbon into my soil. The cows trample it. They don't really like it. They eat through it and pick it out, but then they go find a weed somewhere and they go eat that instead.
Now, do you know that your hay doesn't have Roundup in it or any glycine?
I know that the hay that I buy doesn't, only because the guy can't afford it with the prices that he sells me the hay at.
Okay.
The reason is that I'm usually buying year-old hay, so anything that would be left in it has been broken down.
Okay. Because that is one thing that I've learned. I put some hay out and some stuff. It didn't work out well. It kind of died off, and I was like, oh, okay. And I did some research, and I was like, that's what happened there. Mm-hmm. It was like I basically brought that into the situation. I want to talk about more like homestead, like. There's a lot going on, and I continue to believe that the answer is be the solution. Like that's just what it is. And I think getting as independent as possible makes the most sense. Joel Salatin kind of blew my mind on, you don't need to own land to be a farmer. Mm-hmm. Maybe you do to be a homesteader, but you definitely don't to be a farmer. And he talks about mobile farming operations and setting up mobile farming operations. So I want people listening to think through, like, you can do these things that we're talking about, whether or not you're going to go buy land.
So if you ever read his book, You Can Farm, it's a phenomenal book if you're looking at doing this and you want to start homesteading or starting a small farm. Mm-hmm. But one of the examples he gives on there is somebody that basically lived in a subdivision and wanted a garden and wanted to sell produce and wanted to farm. And they went to everybody's house on that subdivision and built a garden in each one of their lots and said, I'll give you a quarter of my vegetables that I produce on your lot, and you give me the rest to sell. And they were able to do this throughout the whole subdivision. There are solutions out there if you don't own the land. Now, the reality of it is that you can usually find a couple acres to get started fairly cheap. And it's nice to have a couple acres to get started, especially if you want to homestead. But it's not a requirement. I mean, you're on 6 acres, right?
Yeah, we're on 6. I've got a neighbor behind me that has 7. And then I've got a ranch that we are next door to. So I'm got a lady behind me at 7. And then next door, they've got 410. Mm-hmm. So, 410 acre ranch there. They've got cows on it, and then state park on the other side.
Gotcha.
So, that's kind of where we're at. So, 6 acres, but really is it 6 acres of grass? Not really. I've got some food forest in there. I've got some road in there. I got a house in there now, 2 houses, barn, that type of thing. So like I probably have 4 acres of grass, you know?
Well,
Yeah.
to let you know,
Yeah.
so everything that you see on our channel, everything you see us working, the cows and everything, we're the bees, the orchard, everything is all on 5 acres. We have not touched the 15 acres that we have on the other side of the road.
Wow.
Try to start clearing yet.
Wow.
That's our winter project this year, is to get 7 acres over there fenced, and it won't be cleared; it'll be fenced. And then over the next probably 18 months, we'll be clearing both the 5 acres over here and the 7 acres over there.
Okay. Wow. I did not know that.
On good land. And the thing to remember is that you look at it logically, right? I have 2 options if I want to double my land, right? I can either buy more land and double my land, or I can figure out a way to make my production value of that land substantially better and increase the production value of that land. What I mean by that, am I making my grass grow twice as fast and being twice as dense and having a lot more forage there for my cows? Because if I have grass that's growing better, so if I'm irrigating, if I've got good organic matter in the soil, if I've got nitrogen going down, because there's 50 pounds of nitrogen coming out of that cow every single day, or 50 pounds of fertilizer out of that cow every single day.
Wow.
And if I'm taking advantage of that and using that, I'm going to get the growth there. And so my 5 acres that I'm using is going to produce more like 10 or 15 of somebody that's using traditional farming methods right down the road.
Okay, got you. I just started doing the chicken tractor, and I'm doing it with egg layers. I noticed Joel Salatin does it with meat birds. Mm-hmm. I'm doing it with current like egg layers. At least I have no intention of harvesting them for the meat. It seems to be working pretty good. I've already noticed in like the last 3 weeks that I've started it, when I move it every day, they're eating some of the grass, not a ton. I'm still in the process of building that grass, giving a lot of variety. I've noticed when I've run them over on something I would traditionally have called a weed, sometimes they love it. So I'm like, oh, I need more of those, Mm-hmm. And like, but the areas behind them are getting lush, like a big difference between what they were on 3 weeks ago and what they're going on tomorrow morning.
Yeah. So chickens, you figure about, I think it's 75 chickens. He does it in a 12 by 12, 12 by 10 cage is how he does it.
Yeah, which is really tight.
It is, but you're moving them every day, which is why it's not, they're still getting a substantial amount of free land and everything in there. And they're only that big, those 4 pound chicken, 4, 5, 6 pound chickens at the end of that time frame, right? They're not for the majority of their time in that they're going to be this big and growing. And so egg layers are a different breed, obviously. It's a different creature entirely in the way that you're going to raise them. But then you also have to look at the type of chicken you raise. If you're raising stuff like heritage breeds, they're going to be not near as good at producing meat or eggs, but they will be substantially better at foraging. So if you do something like and not heritage breeds, but breeds that are designed for foraging. So Freedom Rangers are the most popular for meat birds that are foraging meat birds.
Foraging, okay.
But they take about 12 weeks to grow, as opposed to a Cornish cross, which takes about 8 weeks to grow. But the Freedom Rangers are better meat, it tastes better. So if you're growing it for yourself, it's definitely the way to do it. They'll be a little bit smaller. The cost, the input of feed will be less, because even though you're growing them longer and they're smaller, they will forage for substantially more of their food. And so they'll eat a lot more of the grass and a lot more of the insects.
Okay, so foragers or Freedom Rangers is what they're kind of labeled.
Well, Freedom Ranger is the breed. That's the breed.
Okay. All right. So that's the breed I need to look at and, consider.
It's definitely one to consider if you're looking at meat. If you're looking at egg chickens, so egg chickens need to be rotated out. So you need to make sure that you're, because they're only going to get 2 years of good production, right? 2 to 3 years of good production on the eggs. So you want to rotate them out. And there's a couple ways you can do that to mark them. And this is the biggest hassle. They have bands that go around their feet that you can mark the chickens with. What we do is we buy 3 different types of chickens, right? We buy Astrolorps, which are black, buy Leghorns, which are white, and we buy Rhode Island Reds, which are red, right?
Got those.
So I buy one of those 3 every year. So if I'm buying 30 Rhode Island Reds this year, that means I'm culling 30 Astrolorps, right? Because and so it's easy to keep track of them because they're all different color. So at any given time, ideally, we'll have 2 colors on our farm, and then there's 1 color that's being butchered for that year. And
so are you using that bird to lay eggs for 2 years and then you're butchering it?
Yeah.
Okay, got it. Because some people will just go meat bird 12 weeks, boom, they're done because that's all
Yeah.
they're.
Well, so if you butcher it after 2 years, remember it's a stewing hen at that point in time. So they're so tough, you're not going to make a fryer out of them. Best thing that you can do with those is they make great for like canning chicken and stuff like that. So if you want to can it, because you're going to have to pressure cook it or put it in a stew to get it to get it tenderized. It's going to be really really tough, like turkey.
Okay.
Like turkey.
Okay.
And so it's going to be super super tough. And they're called stewing hens. It's what you call them after when they're ready to go, and when they're done laying. They'll taste really, really good. They'll have more flavor than anything else will. It'll be all dark meat. They'll be really, really good. More flavor than any chicken that you'll ever have otherwise, but they'll just be a lot tougher.
Okay. All right. Thought that. I mean,
we can it, and then you'll make like chicken and dumplings and stuff like that out of it. Work great.
Okay. I mean, the investor in me says that's the way to go, right? Like, like have it lay for you. And most birds don't lay for 6 to 8 weeks, 6 to 8 months. I'm finding, before they'll start laying. But you get a year and a year and a half of laying out of it, and then you go to harvest it. You've gotten a lot of value out of that bird.
Right, absolutely, yeah. And that's definitely your biggest bang for your buck. You want to look at, like I said, you want to look at birds that are considered dual purpose, but they're heavy on the egg layer side. That's what you're looking at. So there are better layers than a Rhode Island Red, but Rhode Island Reds are great because there's actually carcass left at the end. There's different laws of different breeds for egg layers, but some of them will produce a lot of eggs, but they have no meat left at the end. They're nothing but skin and bones, and so they're not even worth butchering.
Okay, all right.
Things like the silkies, people tend to feel bad butchering silkies because silkies are furry and they're cute and they're fun, and then they have, if you get the black ones, they have black skin, so they don't always look that appetizing. So silkies are great for like little small subdivision, backyard tractors. As far as raising them to butcher later on.
Okay. Yeah, the Rhode Island Reds is what I've currently been messing with. I mean, I added them. Let me say that. I added them, and I'm pretty happy with them. They grow pretty quick. And
so what you want to do then is you want to add Astrolorps next year. And then the year after that, you would buy like something like a Leghorn, something that's, again, like a white chicken, something that stands out from the rest of them. And then when those start producing, you butcher all your Rhode Island Reds.
Okay.
And then you can tell by the type of eggs they lay too, because the Rhode Island Reds are going to be brown eggs. What do you call it? The Leghorns will be white. And so there's different colors. Or our neighbors are actually raising ones right now that they have black chicken eggs, which are, I'm really excited to see those.
Yeah.
Egg. The chicken is all black feet, black beak, black everything. It's all black, and they have black eggs. And I forget what they're called, but she paid a fortune for them. But I'm excited to try one of the eggs from it. I've never seen a black egg.
Yeah. I mean, the rotational growing concept was interesting to me because I'm like, okay, like they're using these electric fences to essentially pen these guys in. So you don't even need to have the whole property fenced. Like you can basically just fence in whatever you're going for and then move it every day. Am I correct on that?
So you can, yes. So this is where Greg Judy and Joe Soliton differ a little bit. So Greg Judy tells you should have the whole property fenced, the entire perimeter fence done before you're putting a cow or a sheep or something on that. Joe Soliton's like, set up temporary fencing and drive on with your bad self. Get it producing. We did it the way that Joe Soliton said to did it. I wished we had done it the way that Greg Judy said to do it.
Okay, good. Okay.
Greg Judy's method is a better method for in that sense. It is better to get a good quality perimeter fence because it's cheap and easy. You go to PowerFlex fence, you get fiberglass fence posts, you get a few creosote posts from your local lumber supplier, and set those up at your corner. Fiberglass fence posts, 3 wires all the way around, and you're done. I mean, it is stupid simple to set up a good quality perimeter fence that'll keep in cows and sheep. Now that fence is not going to keep in goats, and those fences don't work that well for keeping in pigs. But pigs are a little bit different because pigs you'll set up with a ground wire where they're at in their space. And so the pigs, you're not so worried about that exterior fence, but you definitely want that in there for the cows. We use a 5-wire exterior fence is how we do it.
Okay. All right. Well, that's good to know. I mean, 5-wire exterior fence.
Yeah, because if our pigs got out, they wouldn't get out of that outside fence line.
Right, that makes sense because that's the sketchy thing about it is you're like, oh well, I don't have the whole place fenced, and if they get out of that one fence, there's not a secondary fence later that they'll find in an acre or two. when they get
Correct.
there.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then that rotating fence can be a lot simpler, right? So because if you're not worried about them getting out, well, you don't need a post more than one every 20 feet, and you just hang one wire in there. And half the time, I don't even have mine hot because
Okay.
it doesn't matter.
Okay.
Now, I do still set up temporary fences all the time. Our neighbors let us graze one of their green fields, and we'll run a temporary fence around their green field for a couple of days and put the cows out there and graze their green field. And we'll do that periodically. And that one, I don't like doing it. I wish I could have a permanent fence around it, but we kind of deal with it because it's not our property. And
Yeah.
So
It's free. So
free.
what's the math on it? Like, how many acres a cow? Obviously, when you're starting out, like your soil is going to be whatever it is. And as you go, you're going to develop that soil. So you're going to get more out of the soil. But like when you're just, raw numbers, like.
So this is the question that everybody wants to ask. And so it's usually measured in animal units. So rather than saying a cow, you're going to say an animal unit, which is 1,000 pounds, right? So
1,000 pounds of meat.
1,000 pounds of meat, 1,000 pounds on the hoof. So whether that's 5 ewes,
chickens or whatever, anything. Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay.
So, but anyway, so that one animal unit, if you're in somewhere like Wyoming, where the grass grows a lot slower, they get a lot less rainfall, and you haven't done any rotational grazing on it, you haven't built that soil, and it's basically, grass growing in the sand at that point in time, you're gonna do one cow per 10 acres there to actually be able to do it, and have it all grass fed. But once that soil starts building, you'll increase that drastically and exponentially over the next couple of years. You come down here, where you and I are at, you're in Florida, I'm in Alabama, you come down here, then all of a sudden we're looking at, oh my gosh, I can do a cow and a half per acre because we have so much more grass and I can regraze it every 30 days.
Okay. All right. So, that makes sense. That's kind of what I'm trying to figure out is like, okay, where do I start at? I know that cows have to be together.
Start smaller than what you think, because cows are more expensive than what you think.
Yeah.
So start smaller than what you realize. They will eat a lot more hay than what you think on that first year. And so especially you have a tractor, but if you don't have a tractor and you don't used to doing round bales, square bales are a pain. And when you have to do square bales for 8 cows, it's a lot of bales to go through for a winter. And it's a lot of feeding to do. And the other thing is feed, because you've got to have those calories going into them, especially when it gets cold outside. And when you start seeing bad weather rolling in, you've got to be getting them some calories, even if you're like us. Like we don't feed our animals corn and soy, but I tell everybody all the time that when my animals are sick, they get taken care of. And when we have an animal that went down because he was not eating enough, the other cows were pushing him off, and we had a bad blizzard come in. And we woke up, and his feet were straight up in the air. Like I thought we were going to lose him. And, but we got him inside, got him warmed up, and we started giving him corn. And everybody knows that we don't feed our cows corn, but I told him, I'm not going to let the cow die just because I don't want to feed him corn. He needed the carbohydrates. He had to have them. And we corn fed him for probably 3 weeks while we were just trying to put some weight on him.
Yeah. Okay. That makes a lot of sense. Okay. So start with less than, I think they got to be in pairs, right? You got to have at least 2 or more.
Yeah. All livestock really needs to be in pairs. Okay. Pigs should always be raised in pairs. Cows should be raised in minimum pairs. They really need the other animals with them.
Okay. That makes a lot of sense. Now, grazing time, you have a cow go by, then how long till the pigs?
Immediately. You'll move the pigs on there immediately. You'll find that the pigs are harder to move, and so you tend to get lazier with them. The cows, you move more. But the thing that you're going to run into is that everything looks really nice and easy on Joe Solitan's farm, and that's because they're all making a full-time living farming. And so they can go out there and rotate cows every day, and they have people to help when they go on vacation and get sick.
Yeah.
You don't have that. You don't have any of those advantages for you when you start your job. So you're not going to rotate them every day. I promise you. It's not
okay. Yeah, because I'm already starting to not keep up with the chickens.
Yeah.
I'm there, but I'm like closing the coop after dark. I'm opening it like after the sun's definitely been up for a little bit. You know what I mean? Like I'm not.
We try to do ours every 3 days. We try to rotate ours every 3 days, and that doesn't always happen. And in fact, right now, they got out of the last pen, and I haven't gotten back in. I've just been letting them graze the property for a week because I haven't had time to go deal with it because we've got another business to run.
Yeah, right. Right.
And so it's just we haven't had time to deal with it. So that's just a reality. The pigs are a little harder to rotate so you don't rotate them every day anyways. I wouldn't rotate them every day if I was full-time farming.
Yeah. Okay.
They're a lot harder to rotate. I would rotate them every 2 weeks.
Okay. I mean, the chickens and the chicken tractor have been working really good. I'm really enjoying like having a clean area because it's a lot easier to keep them clean.
And if you're just going to do a small farmstead, you can do pigs and a pig tractor too. You can do the same thing.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah. Cause the chicken tractor was a game changer, really was. Cause it's like, okay, now I'm able to mow some of this area. It's starting to like cause I need to get something on the soil, start building it. I've got good soil. I forestry mulched the entire thing and it was virgin forest when I got there. So it's good soil, like, but at the same time, I wasn't able to like really start adding anything to it unless I want to go get like some, petroleum fertilizer and start spraying. I don't want to really roll that way.
Yeah.
So
putting pigs on there behind them will actually help your soil a lot because pigs give a good amount of disturbance. And so the way you measure disturbance is you measure the pigs. It doesn't matter how many pigs you have, whether you raise 50 pigs or 2 pigs, the equation is still the same. It's 1 ton of feed per acre. So once they've used up that 1 ton of feed, you got to get them off that acre.
Okay.
And so the equation doesn't change no matter how, if you're only raising them on 1/4 of an acre, then you use 1/4 of a ton of feed to figure out, right? So 500 pounds of feed to figure out when to move them to the next spot.
Okay.
The equation always works the same.
Okay. So 1 ton of feed per acre, and then an animal unit is 1,000 pounds on the hoof per acre.
Correct.
Okay. All right.
So what I would start with, if I was starting on your property and I was going to do it, I would start with like 2, maybe 3 cows.
Yeah, that's what I was going to do, was 2. Yeah.
And honestly, you're going to start with like 2 steers and just take them both to butcher. Is that what you're thinking?
Yeah, pretty much.
That's the simplest way to do it. That's absolutely what I would start with. And don't start breeding yet when you're, slow down on the breeding. I know everybody wants to jump into it, and we did, and it was a huge mistake. You should slow down on it. Your first year with just 2 steers and figure it out with them.
Yeah, I figured
there's a lot of people that say that you should start with goats, and I don't agree with that because honestly, goats are harder than cows.
My neighbor has goats. My next door neighbor has goats, and they're driving him crazy.
I hate goats. And the reason I don't like goats is goats are loud. Goats test fences. Goats are a lot more problems. And I know I got it. Somebody's going to say in the comments, our goats don't do that. They don't test fences. You got to train them. I don't want to train them. My cows are really easy to train. And my cows stand with 1 wire, and I don't care how well trained your goats are. They're not staying in with 1 wire.
Yeah, right. Now, if you have a milk cow, is that a thing? Like, does it have to be a cow that was previously pregnant, and then you have to continue to milk it to keep it from drying up? Like, how does a milk cow work?
Yeah, I mean that's and to be clear, we don't do milk cows. Time, but we'd like to. I just don't have the time to do it. But so a milk cow, if you want milk all year round, you have to have 2 milk cows. Otherwise, you only have milk for about 8 to 10 months out of the year, because what you're going to do is that cow's going to get pregnant, right? Drop the calf, and then the cow's you're going to wean the calf off, and you're going to basically sharing the milk with the calf at first. And then once the calf is fully weaned, which is why a lot of people force the weaning, we let our cows wean naturally. That's why a lot of people force the weaning, is because they want the milk, and so they'll keep milking them.
Okay.
And then you just keep milking them, the cow will keep producing milk, and then you can do that for, like I said, between 8 and 10 months healthy, and then you let them dry up, and then they at that point in time they'll be ready to drop into the cow.
Okay. All right. I have to ask, how long do people sometimes allow it to go before the cow dries up?
You mean like do they,
like when I was a kid reading storybooks, it was like, oh, old Betsy is the milk cow, and it just seemed like, oh, you have a cow and milk comes from there, not like this cow has to get pregnant again and have a, like, I didn't, like,
I mean, the milk cow's going to be pregnant every year. So as soon as and there's different, everybody has different rules on that, on when they get pregnant. So you have to ask an individual farmer on how they want to do that.
I mean, is it possible to have a cow for like 3 years without it having another calf and it's continuing to be a milk cow?
I see what you're saying. So,
you know what I'm saying? Like, I know that you shouldn't do that. Like, from what you just said, like, oh, we do 7 months healthy or whatever. I'm like,
I don't know theoretically, Trav. I mean, I've never even thought about that. Like, how long can you just keep milking a cow for and have her keep producing milk?
I've seen some sick milk cows, skinny and things like that. So I wonder.
Milk cows are always going to be skinny and scrawny like that. So good milk cows will always look like that. They always look like a bag of bones. It's because they put all their fat into their milk, and that's what they're bred for. And it's not necessarily, heritage breed cows won't look like that. But heritage breed cows will look somewhere in the middle, right? So like a Florida cracker, which is a milk and a dairy and beef cow, right? Florida crackers are a mixed breed.
That's what you told me to look for, and they do exist.
Yeah, and they do decently on both, right?
Yep.
But we don't get near as much meat, and we don't get near as much fat in our meat, and we also wouldn't get near as much fat in our milk if we were doing it. But it's a mixed breed cow, and it's a natural cow, so it's not bred to overproduce in one area versus the other. The fat's got to go either to their milk or to their body. We take a pick.
Okay. Yep. Okay. Yeah, because I've been looking for these Florida cows. I talked to some 4-H kids and stuff like that, and they're all like, "What are you talking about?" And then one kid it was like, "Oh yeah, dude, that's the thing. Here's some numbers. You want some numbers? Here's the guys that sell them." I'm like, "All right, cool."
Yeah, I can't. When you're ready to do it, just call me. I'll give you all the guys around you that sell them.
All right.
They're all actually. There's not that many. There isn't but about 30 registered Florida cracker breeders in the country.
I figured this rainy season I was going to let the place continue to develop and like get more grass going because I'm still seeing some bare spots and things like that. I'm like, all right, I really want to have like reduce that feed cost as much as possible and like not have to move them as much, you know.
Yeah, you need to plan on a lot of hay your first year.
Okay. Now that kind of sounds like it's going to happen. Like, so we're going to be doing hay. What type of stuff should you be feeding? Like chicken? What I'm interested in growing here is like obviously chickens. Cow would be cool because I like the idea of the independence of meat like your family has. Like you guys send your cows to get butchered, you put it in the freezer, your kids are eating steak whenever. Like I know you work for it, but like you're not worried about like is it going to be available or not?
Yeah,
you know, that's the big thing. And if you know you're local to you, like you go do a deal with Mackey and just be like, hey, you know, I got my cow handled because Mackey's on it and we're paid for and we're good. You know, like, and that's the advantage of like going and doing that. My family's talked about buying a cow, splitting it, you know, that and my friends do that. They buy a cow, they split it. What type grasses should you be trying to mix in for that ideal pasture?
So this is, again, there's some different debate on this. So Joe Salatin is very proud of the fact that in 60 years, they've never brought in a bag of seed or a bag of fertilizer.
Right. Very proud.
And Greg Judy doesn't either, actually. But then you look at Gabe Brown, and Gabe Brown, he does the exact same thing, and he's got better production than both of them. And he strategically plants seeds every year. Now, he's unbelievably knowledgeable on what seeds and how to mix these all together. And that takes some time. I'll be honest with you. We planted seeds this year and I wasn't happy with my results on it. So we're letting our natural stuff come through. We'll probably overseed some in the future.
Yep.
And we're adding seeds by overseeding of things that are desirable. But the reality of it is that we want a salad bar for our cows. We don't want one type of grass. So I don't want a field of nothing but fescue 31. I want a field that has fescue because fescue sends roots down and their roots get down to about 16 feet. Bermuda grass roots only go down to about 4 feet. So the nutrient in that fescue, even though the fescue is generally considered a not near as good a quality grass because it doesn't have as high protein content, it has more trace elements and more trace minerals in it.
That's cute.
So the better our pasture is established, the less trace minerals we have to feed our cows. So anyway, so the fescue does that, and then the fescue goes down to, like I said, about 16 feet. Bermuda goes down to about 4. You start adding things in like Bahia, Kentucky bluegrass. Kentucky bluegrass is generally considered a poor grass for grazing, but you know what? Kentucky bluegrass will grow where other things won't. So if you spread Kentucky bluegrass on your property and you get that seed out there, Kentucky bluegrass will grow in the shaded areas where nothing else is going to grow.
Gotcha. So the answer is a mix of whatever you can grow. In our area, it's typically St. Augustine. There's 2 different types. There's or not St. Augustine. We have St. Augustine, but Bahia is the big one. There's the difference is Pensacola Bahia or Argentine Bahia. You know, so those are the 2 things that are popular. We do have Bermuda that grows naturally.
Well, and realize there's different types of Bermuda too. And so you got to look at that. So coastal Bermuda has the highest protein content.
Okay. Oh, and brown millet. I planted some of the here before. I've had some success with it when I was establishing it. Like after I had cleared the place and it was all just a mud pit and I was trying to get something going, I planted Bahia, but to get, you know, Bahia takes 6 to 8 weeks to sprout. So I had brown millet that sprouted in a week, provided some shade, canopy. And then, you know, at the first time I mowed it, boom, there's the Bahia, you know, popping up.
That's basically what we did with the Sudan grass. We did Sudan grass to come up and shade everything else to keep the soil in.
Now I noticed the hunter guys around here during bird season will put brown millet out and their birds will like feed off of it. Or at least the wild birds will come in for, you know, turkeys and what dove and whatever they're looking for. Are you familiar with brown millet? Is that a thing? Should I be trying to, it looks like it's like really grainy grass. It looks like it's got like a lot to it.
It's in a lot of feed mixes. I've never personally grown it, so I don't know much about it from that standpoint. It's in a lot of feed mixes. What we have mixed here is when I've mixed things is I've gone through the list and said, okay, where do I want my rootstock to go? I wanted my rootstock to be established deep to pull up the trace minerals.
Okay.
And grass with lots of protein. I wanted lots of different benefits, right? So when we mix, we do Bahia, we do Bermuda, we do fescue. And so we put all three of those in there. And then I'm going to do like a ryegrass or Sudan grass or something that'll get that shade till everything else to sprout, but that's only for that 1 year.
Yeah.
And then I'm also going to add in there, and I'm going to add a little bit of clover, and I'm going to do white clover. I'm going to do red clover. I'm going to do some perennials and some annual clover. So I usually buy a clover mix and I mix it all in there.
Okay.
And the other thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to do something like sugar beets that have a big taproot, and they come down this taproot. They pull up a bunch of nitrogen, right, and then they store that nitrogen in that big beet right up at the soil, and then you can turn that in later if you want to, or you can just let it sit there and rot, and it'll release it out to the plants around it. But they send down a big taproot, and that'll get you, because fescue is going to get 16 feet, but fescue is not going to get 16 feet that first year. Fescue grass to grow down has roots down. Yeah. But I'll tell you that, that taproot from that sugar beet is going to go down 1 year, and it's going to be down there at 10 feet in 1 year. And it's going to be pulling up nutrients that's not available to any of the other grasses.
Right. Helping the rest of the grasses go. Because I mean, that's the cool thing about polyculture is like, that's the key. I'm finding that with my food forests. Like when I put things next to each other, they do well. Mm-hmm. Like, and sometimes they don't, but sometimes they do really well. And I'm like, okay.
I mean, you've seen our food forest, but we've talked about that in videos in the past where like, I don't plant a banana right next to a banana right next to a banana in a row. We have it all mixed in there, and in fact I don't even lay them out in nice clean rows. I just kind of eyeball it. I'm like, okay, stick it in the ground.
This will work. Yeah. And I mean, what's amazing is that you guys can grow bananas up that way, because you and I've got one of those vanilla bananas. I guess you do too. It's one of my varieties. It's not what?
I've got an ice cream banana.
Ice cream, that's what it is. Sorry, ice cream. Yeah, I've got that too. I've got a bunch.
This is the first year with it growing, and I had 6 of them planted, and 3 of them died, and so we'll see how it does.
Will you allow your cattle to go through that area, or will they just go crazy? Like when the bananas are large and mature, or will they
when everything is larger and mature? Actually, what I'm going to actually end up doing is when everything in that is larger and mature and able to withstand some wear, we're actually going to put a fence around it and actually use that for starting the piglets on.
Got it.
Because they'll clean everything up on the ground, on the soil, they'll fertilize it. And what we're actually going to end up doing is moving the chicken coop over there for our egg chickens. And so most of the time our chicken's free range, but what I'll end up doing is I'll have 2 entrances on the chicken coop, where one of them they'll be allowed to come out in free range, and the other one I'll allow them into the orchard to clean up the orchard, and I'll allow them in there with the pigs and stuff to kind of clean it up.
That's to wrap on the grasses. Are you familiar with buckwheat or sorghum? I believe it's like the original corn that the Native Americans showed us before we started to genetically modify corn. It's like naturally
corn is one that I've been looking at a lot lately, and we've been researching a lot because we don't grow corn here. But we wanted to start doing our own cornmeal and start actually transitioning to grinding our own cornmeal here on our homestead.
Yeah.
And so corn is something I've been doing a lot of research on lately, trying to figure that out, figure out which corns grow, which ones don't, how to get away from the genetically modified ones to go into more heirloom ones. And so corn's a whole complicated discussion in and of itself. As far as the buckwheat goes, somebody had recommended that to me the other day. I've never grown it, but there was somebody that gave a real long list down on my channel in one of the videos about adding buckwheat to your pastures. On that pasture, that establishing pasture video I did.
I'll watch that. Yeah.
Somebody went down in the comments there.
Yeah.
And wrote about buckwheat, and they had a pretty good write up on it.
Like no one's coming on a white horse to like save our butts. Like it's just
if y'all are not figuring out ways to produce at least some of your own food, you need to be at this point in time.
Yeah, and that's my point. That's my message without being too crazy about it.
This is what I go in with, like, and I try to stay away from the whole prepper idea because we're not preppers, but it's stupid to not be prepared, right? So when I think of preppers, I always think of like the show Doomsday Preppers, where people
like they got a nuclear fallout shelter, and I'm just like, you know what I said on the nuclear fallout shelter? That's where I tap out.
Yeah.
Like that's just, you know what, like the game got too gnarly for me and I couldn't hang. Like, I'm sorry.
So
you know what I mean?
The thing that I always say with this is that you should be building for your first step is 0 to 30 days of food, right? Figuring out like, okay, I need this on hand to get through, like Katrina happened, whatever, these things happen. And then you're building for 30 days to 6 months. and then 6 months to a year, and 1 year to infinity. And when you get to that point where you're doing that 1 year to infinity, that's where you're looking at like how much of this can I restock myself? And you're basically doing it the way that grandma did it, right? Because you're not stockpiling food for zombie apocalypse to come. You're stockpiling food so that you have the ability to make it through to the next harvest, where you can produce some of your own. And I'm not saying that you should be producing 90%, 100%, 70% of your own food. What I am saying is that you should be producing some of your own food, and you should know how to produce and acquire some of your own food. And pretty much everybody from the smallest subdivision can have a garden. And most people that are living in apartments have a balcony that can have a garden. You know what I mean? There's ability to produce your own food.
Yep, absolutely. I mean, tomatoes are relatively easy. They get a little weird with water. They're like too much water, not enough water. They get weird. You know, tomatoes can be rough to figure out. But like, I mean, all of this, a lot of the stuff from the grocery store, you can just literally seed off of it to start it.
Yeah,
I mean, you really can. And just whatever grows easy, grows easy. Throw it in a compost bin. Sometimes things will sprout out of that compost bin. You take it, pot it up, you know, like, but I agree with you 100%. Like if people at this point in time, I mean, food prices will, I mean, there is no reason to think that they're not going to double within the year's time or by the end of the year.
Yeah.
You know, and then they could double again the year after that. And that's the point where it's like you get sort of to a breaking point where like people are going to have to make some real cuts. And like
my prediction is by this time next year, we will at a minimum have a 25% increase in our food costs, which means that if you buy food now, you're crushing the stock market.
Yeah, no, it's true. It's totally true. I mean, and that just gets, I mean, just, and that's not going to stop until there's like an overproduction of food to where it's like, there's just so much of it that the price of it's just going to start going down. Yeah. And that's not happening for a long time because as you and I have discussed, like this is a years out game.
Yeah.
Like this is years out.
Your food forest, an orchard, right? How long does it take for an orchard to produce anything?
Dude, I'm like in 2 years of my food forest. And then I had a freeze this past year and I was like, oh, okay, yeah, I'm going to be like, you know, independent here in another 2 years, probably more like 3, but like, you know, and then that freeze came and it was like, and you've been back set by 9 months.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's,
I mean, we've been growing ours for several years now. We've added a lot this year very aggressively. But we're 3 years before we're really going to see any fruit from it, and 7 years before we're going to see any type of production to where I'm going to have enough to be able to can and make some supplies. You know what I mean?
Yeah, same here. I mean, I'm looking at my stuff and I'm like, could I live off of my spot? I'd be eating like a lot of meat birds. I'd have to do the cows. I'd have to fish a lot more. And I'd have to eat meat. Like honestly, like I'd have to eat a lot more meat and microgreens. I guess those are pretty immediate. You know, you can harvest that stuff 45 days. I got to ask you, the electric fence brand that Salatin talks about or you use, what is that?
Okay, so Greg Judy, he's the one that's real big on the brand of electric fence. Joe Salatin is very big on just get something that works and that's affordable. You know, you got to look at the one that Greg Judy promotes is like $700. The one that Joe Salatin promotes is like $100. Personally, I don't think the $700 one is worth it. I think if you were running a full-time operation like him, I'd be all about having the conveniences of being able to turn it off with a little remote from my gator. But for the fact of the matter is, when you're on a small farm like we are, it's not that big a deal just to go out and unplug it before you go work.
Okay, so whatever works, basically, you're kind of going.
I'm not a fan of like tractor supply equipment because tractor supply is kind of the harbor freight of farming. And so you know, there's things to get there. Don't get me wrong, but a lot of the stuff is very cheap and piss poorly made. And I think that the electric fence chargers are probably on par with that. So I would definitely be looking at a little bit higher quality than that, but probably not much.
Okay, and then your sawmill. I think you said you had paid yourself back on that, like in 1 year of owning it.
Yeah, we've actually paid it off now 3 times over. We bought it. We bought it with the second stimulus check that came.
Wow. Okay. What is that? What's the brand or model?
We bought a Woodland Mills, which is it's the Toyota Corolla of sawmills, right? So you can look at like Woodmiser. That's like the Lexus that like has like all the things that'll basically cut the board for you. You don't have to do anything. You sit in your air conditioned cab and it does it all. And the Woodland Mills. You can get anywhere. You can get a sawmill started anywhere from about $3,000 to $10,000, depending on how much you want to spend on it. We were right in the middle of that, so I bought the smallest sawmill, but I put it on a mobile trailer, and they build the trailers and everything, so they send it to you.
Oh, that's cool.
If I was doing it again, I would probably not do it the same way. I would probably buy. I would buy the next step up sawmill, and I would not put it on a trailer. The trailer is nice and convenient and allows me to move it around, but you know, when you have a farm, you don't move it very much. I would just find a place where it goes and set it down. And if you ever wanted to make money on it, the mobile trailer is really nice because you want to be able to travel to other people's places. But the fact is that unless you're going to spend a bunch of money and have the hoists and everything that are mobile, which are on the wood miser ones, and spend like 30 grand on it, you got to have your tractor there to load the logs anyways. So, you know, you're not going to be cut on other people's property.
If you guys in the comments have any suggestions on things that you've used, it's the next step for me. It's like it's on nice to have for me right now. It's not happening. Like we're in the middle of summertime, rainy season. It's not happening for me right now. Be cool to have going on by Christmas. Maybe it'll be, you know, next spring before we really even think about it again. But at some point, the sawmill is kind of like a great step for us. Like
we have been really happy with it. Like I said, it has paid for itself 3 times over.
Yep.
Like I said, it'll continue to do so. And you definitely want to buy the extension so that you can do 16-foot lumber.
Okay.
They do make extensions for it, and the extensions, the first extension will work with the trailer. If you mount it on the ground, you can do as many extensions as you want. You could cut a 60-foot piece of lumber if you felt like it. You buy as many
okay. Yeah, I got you. That's cool. I just see a lot of use case, like for what we may have coming. Like, I mean, I'm kind of excited about it. I think people are going to get back to real roots and like real relationships. But I just see that being a good resource for people that are, you know, wood is useful.
Yeah,
like it's got uses. So Mackey, we'll link up to your channel. You guys check him out. He's got tons of this great content. You've been cranking out videos, by the way, at least one a day, maybe 2.
Maybe I'm doing more. One a day every morning at 6:30. I have a video go out at 6:30 Central Time every morning, and then except for on Sundays we do a live chat at 1 p.m.
Awesome. You guys check him out. We'll link to his channel, and thank you for coming on.
Thanks, bud. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.